or working with other musicians, it kind of develops into a whole new thing. And so, I mean, to this day, a lot of people think, well, once you get to a certain point, you don't have to continue to play and practice. And I think that is completely opposite of what I'm learning continuously. And especially playing in the Union of Sinners and Saints with such great musicians, producers and legends of CCM music. I'm learning on a daily basis that when I go in there with an open heart, with an open mind, and with the purpose of using the gift that God has given me, like He's given me a gift, a talent, and when I use it for Him, it's my gift back to Him. So it's kind of like just honing my skill so that I can do the best that I can to glorify Him. So, I mean, when you put it into a spiritual sense, that is one way, but also when you put into it, and technically too, is we get better as we go about into new situations. So starting out with recording, I wasn't like, I mean, I'm sure like so many other people, you get to that place to where you have an idea in your head and you go into the studio and it doesn't quite work out the way that you wanted it to. So you adapt. And you are driven maybe by the bass line, maybe by the drums, maybe by the vocal line, and then you go back and do a couple of takes, and sometimes you may have laid it down in the first take. But I think that pre-production is a big part of being prepared and playing, too, before you go in the studio.
Jason, I want to ask you, and Wildman kind of led into this by asking something coming from the guitar perspective. As a guitarist, I'm not a guitarist at all. I sang growing up in choirs and so forth, but I want to ask a question that we've not asked for. So this is a real hot dogs versus hamburgers kind of question. Okay, you can really separate people out by you hot dogs or hamburgers kind of guy. So here's my question for you, sir: Stratocaster or Telecaster?
Oranges and apples would be my answer. They're both good. They're both great. I've always been a Les Paul guy. I have a 79 Silverburst custom Les Paul, and I remember going in, and when I first bought it, or started.
Wait. I'm sorry. Excuse me for interrupting. Could you say that one more time? What Les Paul do you have again?
1979 Silverburst Les Paul custom.
Oh my goodness! I'm just sitting here. Just give me a moment to digest that. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. So the coating on a Les Paul is nitrocellulose back in the day, and basically it allowed the wood to breathe. And I didn't care what the color was when I went to pick it out. I just wanted the playability, and they called the custom Les Paul the Fretless Wonder because it has flatter style frets. I didn't realize that. I'd played about 8 or 9 of them, and I had really liked this one, and it had turned a little green, so it was a greenish kind of patina on the guitar, and I still have that guitar today, and the neck is worn off from 20-something years of me playing, and the silver is there. It's still green, and the finish is crackled. Now, that's for the Les Paul. For the Strat, though, is a totally different sound. The Les Paul is real rich, real warm, and just a great tone. And I realized when I started going to the studio and I started playing Strats, a friend of mine had a Strat as well as G&L is another type of guitar that George and Leo Fender actually started after they had sold Fender to CBS, and he had a G&L. And when I recorded, I noticed that I actually kind of like the Stratocaster a little bit better for recording than I did the Les Paul. So usually I'll utilize the Les Paul for larger, fuller rhythm sounds unless there's a specific solo that needs that Les Paul tone. And then a lot of the solos and a lot of the intricacies of maybe a guitar part that's a finger picking melodic line or something with a staccato feel, I would use a Stratocaster. So really they're both different. My wife actually bought me a Stratocaster that I love, and at first I was thinking in my head, well, I'm a Les Paul guy, but I started really recording with it, and it really changed the way that I felt about Strats, and I play that Stratocaster live a lot as well.
Now, you used a word just now, and we've dropped a name earlier in the interview, And that word and that name really go together in my mind a lot. The word is tone, and the name was Michael Sweet. I've never heard anybody talk so much about tone as Michael does. The guy is just a perfectionist. He's just insane. He just loves to play with tone and really is so careful of what he's looking for and trying to achieve on records. Talk to us a little bit more about that for you. What are you looking for in terms of tone? What kinds of things are you doing to get that tone, whether in terms of particular pedals or whatnot? Just kind of go off on that a little bit for us.
Well, you always get a lot of different combinations going in for a tone. It could be the type of guitar. Definitely will shape a lot of the tone. It has to start out as a good tone from the guitar, and then using effects pedals or maybe an overdrive or something as a fuzz or something that gives a slight compression to it. Those are different things that also can change the way that the guitar plays. And the amps too. The amplifier for me that I love, I have an AD30. It's an orange AD30, and I just love the versatility of it. I love the compression that comes from the tubes, the natural tubes. And basically, when you're playing dynamically, that means if you hit the string hard, it sounds like it's being, you're digging in. If you play lightly, then it cleans up. So I love the versatility of a tube amp. So it just depends on the song, really. It's, really, what is the song maybe asking for, or what does it really need? And so I always try to find what the song is needing. A lot of times, whether it's a guitar riff or a chimey part, or maybe it's a 3-part repetitive arpeggiated part, or it may be a solo. A lot of times what I'll do is try different guitars combinations with different pedals, and then also with different amps. And usually you get your kind of sweet spot, and then you start going back to those. And you start building a resume of tone in your head and from your albums and from your recordings and from your experience. And as you build that repertoire, you know what to go back to get certain things.
Yeah, that's really amazing that as you share that, Jason. I'm sorry for stammering. I'm still trying to get over the equipment that you just stated that you have. If we weren't on lockdown, Wild Man might find a reason to be on your front doorstep. We'll
have a jam session, man.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because. Les Paul. I got my first Les Paul this year, and I've played for 38 years. My wife got it for my birthday, my very first one, and I was excited about that. And we had Rex Carroll from White Cross on the show, and
awesome.
And I asked him about which one did he like, Les Paul or Strat, and of course he said they're both good, but he told me about a trick. A guitarist trick that I never heard of before that I guess Randy Rhoads did way back when, that there's a way you can bend the Les Paul neck to get a whammy bar effect without actually doing any damage, and if you're careful. And it's amazing the things that guitarists can get into. I've always said to other guitarists that we speak a different language because you just go in and guitarists there's just something about it when you play guitar, whether you're amateur or whether you're professional, there's something about the instrument that like say for example me, I played metal and rock and amateur bands and different things, but classical intrigued me. Anything with 6 strings intrigued me, or 12 strings for that matter. There's just something about the instrument of the guitar.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, it is. It's something for hobbyists, definitely. So one of the things that I'm curious about, your style, your personal style that you have when people go to jasonfowler.com and they see your music now and what you're coming out with now. How do you, number one, how would you describe your style to your fans, and number two, what is it that goes into that? How do you come up with your style?
Well, I think your style is just a culmination of, or my style is a culmination of years of just different types of influence, and you could definitely, a lot of the '90s rock that I grew up with too as well comes out in a lot of my music. But also, in the '80s and the '70s, I mean, whether it was Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac to Angus Young to Eric Clapton to Joe Satriani. All of those will come out in certain ways, but I think that my description, one of the guys from Lifeway on my last album, I Fall In, he said it's a Southern rock hill song. It sounds like that, and so I'll take that. I'll take that, and working with the guys, John Schlitt and Billy Smiley, and Billy Smiley actually produced the record, I Fall In, and he's a rocker as well. And so I have tracks like We Rise that are just straight up in your face rock and roll, and then I have songs like Come Alive where there's a riff that is in drop D, and then I have some nice mellow songs too. So I kind of go back and forth in between what my style is, but it always seems to be Southern, riff rock, melody rock. So I don't know exactly how to explain it other than it's Jason Fowler.
That's great. Yeah, that is, it's great to think about, you're out there now with your style, and you're not really trying to copy anybody, but you're just naturally being yourself, which all of us know God certainly blesses that.
Well, I think, too, with one of the things that you're saying is that you develop, I think, your style by actually listening and imitating a lot of people that influence you. And that's what I did most of my career, or pre-career, is just to more or less my influences would come out. And I think that you eventually come to a place to where that culmination defines who God has created you to be, and that is to be yourself, like you said.
Yeah. It's amazing how God kind of puts those pieces of the puzzle together throughout the years. So talk to us. You mentioned about Billy Smiley and John Schlitt. Union of Sinners and Saints is where I first heard of you. And talk to us about that, how that project began and how it started, how you got involved, and where the Union is going right now.
Well, I had recorded my first record, Letters from the Inside, my first Christian record, with Jason Horde, who played with Third Day, and he's out of Georgia, and he's played with a lot of different artists. He's a guitarist, bluegrass background, as a matter of fact, but he's a smoking guitarist as well. And that first record, Letters from the Inside, if you go on Spotify or any digital outlets, you can listen to it, is more rock driven, definitely, from my Southern roots. There's a song called Free to Mend. And I was up in Nashville playing a show, and I played that tune, Free to Mend, with my band. And Billy Smiley was there. It was a conference, and he came up to me afterwards and said, "Man, that rocks. Let's talk about, do you have any plans of recording another album?" And so my manager, record label at the time, we had talked to Billy, and ended up going up to Dark Horse Studios in Nashville and working with Billy Smiley. And he and I started recording, and we co-wrote several of the tunes on my album called I Fall In. And once we started recording tunes, we were having so much fun, because he's a rocker and I'm a rocker at heart. I may have a couple of tunes out there that may have some pop vibe and different things like that, but I'm just such a rocker at heart. I think something happens when you turn a guitar up and have a full band and just play loud. something happens, and it just releases. In a way, it's a spiritual moment for me, and I think that it goes through the guitar as well, and all the musical instruments. But we were about halfway through recording the record, and Billy said, "Hey, I ran into an old friend of mine, John Schlitt from Petra, the other day, and we're thinking about starting something up, maybe a band. we'd love for you to play guitar. And I said, what? Absolutely. I told him I'd think about it, and I thought about it for a second. I said, sure. That would be
Wow, that's incredible.